Can we have a huge round of applause for the official inauguration of the 4th edition of APAC Global Education and Skill Conclave. It's always good to see all of you physically present here, because for last 2.5 years, the last 3 edition of this Global Education Skill Conclave has been done virtually. And it's always good to see all your presence together and interact. There is no alternative physical interaction, but I know this session on hybrid mode of learning today, it will be a mix of physical education and hybrid mode of learning, distance learning, but these are all part and parcel of life. So over to you, Dr. Kalpana Gopalan, for her keynote address. A huge round of applause for her, please.
Good morning to all of you. Honorable dignitaries on and off the dais, my fellow speakers, organizers, and participants of the APAC 4th Global Education and Skill Conclave. What an exciting day is today. After the long spell of COVID-induced online talks and conferences, at last, we have stepped into the cautious freedom of live contact and communication. APAC has seized the opportunity by organizing an exchange of scholarship and ideation on a topic that is so relevant for the times that we live in. We are in a churn. We live in an interconnected time when we experience both the benefits and the pitfalls of globalization. If capital can move seamlessly across borders, so can a virus. The Western proponents of a seamless, stitched-up world are rethinking their options, as in Brexit, as are their developing country cousins in Brazil or India. Clearly, the way forward entails caution, balance, and pragmatism. Winston Churchill exhorted us to never waste a good crisis. COVID-19 has forced us into a prolonged timeout. It has brought radical lifestyle changes. As we move into a calibrated opening up, it is time for us to begin contemplating the end of the crisis, envision what the world will look like in its aftermath, how the pandemic will change the way that we live and work, and what we need to do to adjust to the new normal of the post-COVID-19 world. Today, I will present 3 arguments to you. First, I argue that the new normal of the post-COVID-19 world will see major changes in our professional world. I see 3 vectors of professional change: the accelerated importance and use of information technology, unconventional ways of working, including freelancing and work from home, and increased inter-organizational and intersectoral collaborations and networks. Second, I argue that these changes will demand personal transformations from each of us, of which 3 are cardinal: embracing uncertainty and change, becoming a continuous learner, and practicing personal and collective social responsibility. My third and final argument is that capacity building is the single enabler and tool available to us to navigate those changes. And to leverage capacity building, we need to harness youth who are outside the formal institutional education network, focus on the frontline and backroom workers who are vital to decision making and implementation, and design training programs so as to train teams and not individuals. These, in essence, are my three arguments. Why has COVID-19 thrust this imperative upon us? Does a crisis by itself ensure reform? Every great crisis to mankind has seen a period of confusion, followed quickly by rapid counter-responses. In challenging times, we question accepted realities, devise quick solutions, often outside the usual compass, some of which can become effective enough to become normal quotidian practice. This was demonstrated in the world wars as well as in pandemics such as the Spanish flu. History also suggests that the global economy is remodeled in significant ways after a major crisis like COVID-19, spurring the adoption of new technological strategies and business models. The SARS outbreak in 2003 is seen as a causal factor for the adoption of online shopping by China, which in turn resulted in Alibaba's rise. Closer home, the balance of payments crisis in India led to the paradigm shift of liberalization, globalization, and privatization in 1991. The economic and humanitarian crisis unleashed by COVID-19 is thus an opportunity to reform sectors such as skilling, healthcare, the unorganized sector, and education, which are the underpinnings of our political economy. What changes will we see in the post-COVID professional world? We are seeing several shifts that are taking place in the world of work. The multi-sectoral acceleration of information technology, the advent of freelancing and work from home modes, and the need for lateral, cross-sectoral, and inter-organizational collaboration are three such seminal changes. The advent of technology. The CEO of IBM, speaking in an online forum, said, and I quote him, "History would look back on this as the moment when the digital transformation of business and society suddenly accelerated." COVID-19 has increased digitalization in all spheres of our professional world, whether it is education, healthcare, governance, or entertainment. As schools closed in many parts of the world, e-learning and e-delivery of education saw a smart breakthrough. States like Karnataka launched the Makkalavani, or Children's Voice, for disseminating educative and entertaining content to children. And now we need to ask the question, will the change roll back once we are over the pandemic? My own sense is that while keeping teachers integral to the education process, there will be a new flexibility and agility with curated content through platforms such as Coursera, an entirely new learning experience through artificial intelligence, virtual intelligence, and mixed experience tools. Healthcare is seeing similar changes. Digital efforts in Wuhan to contain the crisis via smartphone trackers demonstrated a powerful new public health tool. Kerala Police launched Project Eagle Eye to use drones for surveillance during the lockdown, using technology as a tool to complement manual surveillance in topography that is inaccessible, such as pocket roads and open fields where jeeps could not traverse. In the entertainment industry, Netflix and Amazon Prime saw a big boost. Netflix viewer numbers swelled as lockdowns across countries kept people at home. Even the requirements of daily activities need digital navigation. As people were forced physically apart, they turned to video calls on WhatsApp. All these show a growing acceptance of technology to help us feel connected. As people became more comfortable with technology and service providers upgraded their infrastructures, creating better pipelines and more streamlined and user-friendly interfaces, technology became easier to live with day to day. Then, the growth of freelancing and work from home modes. COVID-19 propelled us to experiment with work from home on an unprecedented scale. As the CEO of Wipro put it, and I quote him, "Work from home will define a new normal for a lot of industries and will create new opportunities for us to be able to do more work globally." WFH has gone beyond our quotidian processes and scaled new innovative heights. India demonstrated this in the Facebook Geo and the Google Geo deals. The US $5.7 billion investment by Facebook in Reliance Industries Geo platform set a new standard in remote negotiation. With extensive M&A dialogue happening online, even including due diligence and agreement negotiations. This is one of the biggest deals that has taken place either in India or the US, and at a time when there was nationwide lockdown in both countries. Transactions of this magnitude, especially transnational ones, usually involve considerable travel and face-to-face meetings by the higher management and their financial and legal advisors. This time, however, all this happened online. Another shift that we may expect is the emergence of the gig economy. Each of us has to get used to becoming a freelancer. Remote hiring of technical talent will become the norm. Even before COVID-19, we were seeing regular employers, permanent employers like the government or universities, increasingly cutting down on hiring and outsourcing even their core functions. While this may create job insecurity, it is not necessarily a bad thing or even a new one. Take a surgeon. She is attached to one hospital, but she consults in many hospitals. Some surgeons even consult online and earns remuneration from all these hospitals. A talented and skilled individual can peddle her expertise across organizations and be paid by all of them. Remote hiring of talent will become the norm, with corporate positions opening up to skilled candidates everywhere, prioritizing skills over pedigree and geography, all of which is good news for both the economy and the talent pool. It makes talent pools more diverse and businesses and economies stronger. Gig economy and pervasive freelancing will bring in cooperation and coordination across sectoral silos. As freelancing becomes more prevalent, teams will be self-created rather than being created by leaders, and will become more interdependent, more collaborative, more agile, and more flexible. COVID-19 saw the pharmaceutical giants GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi forget their commercial rivalry to build a vaccine, pooling their relative strengths of adjuvant technology and a virus antigen, while Google and Apple teamed up to evolve standards for contact tracing. As Additional Chief Secretary of the Youth Empowerment and the head of NSS Karnataka, National Social Service Scheme Karnataka, in 2020, I myself teamed up with the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, NIMANS, and the National Health Mission to provide curated training on COVID-19 response to NSS officers and volunteers who in turn disseminated this content to communities. All this demands that we build up networks and skills, build each other up professionally with no room for envy or backbiting or jealousy. The post-COVID individual. What personal transformations are entailed? First, embrace change and uncertainty. Heraclitus said that the only thing constant is change. Pragmatism demands that we survive the present moment while building ourselves to thrive in a very different future. In a topsy-turvy world, how does one stay sane and calm? Questions are everywhere. What the future will hold? How will life change? What will the new normal be? Uncertainty is uncomfortable, yet change is inevitable. And COVID-19 has only accelerated the pace of change and made it palpable. In such a dynamic and unpredictable situation, those who accept uncertainty and are willing to take swift, decisive, and risky action will hold the advantage. As lockdown was announced and non-essential businesses were instructed to close, business owners were suddenly faced with the tough choice of either stopping operations completely or finding new ways to provide service. Many restaurants closed their doors but kept kitchens open, tying up with delivery services like Swiggy and Zomato to deliver food at homes. Barbers, whose salons closed down, began to offer home haircut services. Hence, the first personal transformation that the post-COVID-19 challenge demands from us is the realization that change is the only constant and that things may change any moment. This calls upon us to embrace uncertainty, develop equanimity, mental balance, emotional intelligence, and agility of thought and action. Next, become a continuous learner. Continuous learning opens up our minds and changes our attitudes. Knowledge is now at our fingertips. To function effectively amidst this rapidly changing world of technology, we need to learn new things to become valuable. Those not making use of the opportunity will stagnate. Do not be left behind. Ensure that you remain up to date and keep up with industry trends and adapt your skill sets. Resources for continuous learning are many. Read magazines and periodicals. Analyze and critique case studies. Subscribe to publications that are relevant to your work or interests. Connect with global networks using Zoom, social media, and email. Attend training courses and webinars and conferences like this one. Try MOOCs such as Coursera and edX. Listen to podcasts and watch documentaries. The days when one went through a neat linear progression of study, work, retire will be replaced by a career of constant personal reinvention and learning with doing. Thus, the second transformation required from all of us is continuous learning. It is vital to prepare yourselves for the coming future. Our third and most important self-transformation is the practice of collective social responsibility. We are familiar with CSR or corporate social responsibility, but this is not enough. CSR is still someone else's job. It is up to each of us to adopt personal social responsibility. We each have a duty to each other. Personal social responsibility is still easier to practice, say by teaching a child or helping a destitute person in need. But what COVID-19 has brought home to us is a larger collective social responsibility. The health of our communities depends on our individual actions. Thus, it calls upon our collective social responsibility that emphasizes our responsibility to the community. There are many ways that the pandemic has expanded opportunities for exercising collective social responsibility. We have suddenly and sharply become aware of a joined-up world. Paradoxically, COVID-19, while emphasizing physical distancing, has reminded us how interconnected our world really is. The virus spread from a market in Wuhan to almost every corner of the globe in just 3 months. Such a public health crisis is a reminder and a demonstration of how interfused we are with the rest of the world. What happens overseas or in a neighboring state can directly and immediately impact lives in our country, state, or home. As we collectively navigate this health crisis, there are ways in which we can practice collective social responsibility. It is a general consensus of public health experts that the only way to counter the spread of COVID-19 is for each of us to follow the required discipline and protocols. Wash our hands, keep our distance, stay home in lockdowns. The health of our family, community, and economy depends on us setting aside our personal wants and needs for the good of the whole community. Even in complying with the lockdown, while it may feel that we are sheltering inside to benefit ourselves, paradoxically we are doing it for the common good. Social distancing causes a disconnection that can be disorienting. While we need to maintain physical distance to stop the spread of COVID-19, we need social connection even more than ever. Therefore, the pandemic is an opportunity to practice collective social responsibility, helping us overcome our prejudices, reinforcing our ethics and values, extending our reach, finding ways to reach out and involve, developing curiosity and compassion. Finally, my third argument, how do you bridge the professional changes and the personal transformation that is required from each of us? Herein lies the criticality of capacity building. COVID-19 has thrown up challenges and changes in our professional world, primarily the importance of technology, the growth of freelancing and work from home, and the increase of lateral and cross-sectoral collaboration. This in turn calls for personal transformations from each of us by embracing uncertainty and change, becoming continuous learners, and practicing collective social responsibility. Capacity building is the tool which enables this transformation. As we emerge out of the pandemic, what aspects of capacity building should we as individuals and as a nation focus upon? First, leadership. Every big crisis is a test of leadership. But COVID-19 is not really about political influence or corporate power. It is about the everyday leadership that we as individuals and as citizens demonstrate in our daily lives. Therefore, our capacity building should focus as much on qualities and character traits as on specializations. Traits such as calmness and equanimity, skills such as communication and problem solving, the attributes of a strong work ethic and a compassionate worldview. And of course, the leadership that is able to lead with persuasion and influence and not dictate, encourages participation, not hierarchy, and is purpose-led, not power-driven. These should form part of skill development as much as technical skills. Second, the front line and the back room become important. In an increasingly digitalized world, with social media creating a virtual reality, presence and authenticity become even more important. Decision making in the pandemic is taken at the higher levels of the medical fraternity or the bureaucracy. But these decisions are crucially dependent on the kind of inputs and information that flow from the bottom, from the lab technician or the ASHA worker who is on the field. Similarly, the decisions taken at the apex level have to be properly disseminated to and understood by each person down the line. Without this, implementation suffers. COVID-19 is not merely a health crisis, but a logistical marathon. Vast quantities of data, medical and non-medical, are being collated, entered, sorted, cleaned and readied for decision makers by tribes of data entry operators and analysts. It is not the number of beds or ventilators that determine outcomes, but the quality of medical personnel, and that requires time and investment. We can procure a bed, but to get a qualified nurse who understands infection control or a pulmonologist is not something that we can procure in a month. These are long-term capacity building investments and highlight the importance of frontline and backroom workers and teach us to respect dignity of labor. Third, the focus should be on training teams and not individuals. We saw that the pandemic makes freelancing acceptable, as well as calling for greater collaboration across teams and organizations. It is likely that future teams will comprise permanent, temporary, freelance and machine employees, and this diversity will call for greater need to build cohesion within the members. Yet our educational system does not prepare us for cross-sectoral coordination of equals. Engineers train with engineers, doctors with doctors, bureaucrats with bureaucrats. Within each fraternity, hierarchy is the fallback option to resolve differences of opinion. But what happens when a policeman has to implement a medical decision made by a doctor based on data analytics produced by a computer scientist? We get lost in translation as they struggle with their different vocabularies and work processes. To avoid this and to face future crises better, we need to train teams, not individuals. Our pedagogy should mandatorily include case studies, self-reliance and decision-making situations, problem-solving, immersion experiences, and the like. In conclusion, let me say that choices, not crises, determine our opportunities. COVID-19 has changed the world like never before. The global lockdowns that we saw were unprecedented and perhaps even incomprehensible to human minds. Yet, amidst all this, opportunities lurk. It is time for governments, businesses, and individuals to prepare for the worst, but also prepare themselves to recognize and utilize these opportunities and keep the faith that we may transform into a newer, stronger, and reinvented India. I glanced at the program schedule and I was glad to see the scope and depth of the topics covered. I am certain that at the end of the two-day conclave, all participants will return enlightened and equipped to face the exciting and challenging global future that faces all of us. With this keynote, I wish the APAC 4th Global Education and Skill Conclave all success. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kalpana Gopalan. whatever you have said, it comes from the huge experience, I think almost 34 years of experience as a bureaucrat and in the public policy domain. And by the way, Dr. Kalpana Komal is also advisor to many universities and education institutes across the country. If I take a crux of what you have said, that the pandemic has taught us the importance of leveraging IT more, with the freelancing of ideas and also the importance of capacity building. And we should see this challenge as an opportunity to reinvent not as a country as a whole, but also reinventing various aspects of education and healthcare and other aspects as well. Thank you so much.